Hello, glad to see you on my channel. I really value it. And today I want to share with you a wonderful story. It's a dramatic story that will come as a total shock to everybody. It is a really amazing story. So enjoy watching it.
Please, cried the girl. She didn't have enough strength to drag this woman into the entrance, but no one could help. The streets were deserted. Selena didn't understand why she was doing this. It was just the first thing that came to mind she put into action. She made one last push, and already the woman was outside the threshold of the entrance. You stink. The girl plucked her nose and wrinkled her nose. She got up and went home. How long am I going to wait for you? Jack shouted to his buddies. Where are you always in a hurry? The guys were just putting on their leather jackets and blazers. I don't like to be late. He stood by the car and stared at the wheels. Nobody's late for anything. Billy came out to him. They had a jammed arrow today. They needed to keep their faces on the ground. How many? Asked Jack about the number of people his friends had pulled up. 40 men, one of them shouted. That's enough. He spat and got into the car. It wasn't the first time they'd been together, so they knew what was going to happen. They drove up to a large warehouse. No one was there yet. They started to look around. Not a couple minutes later, cars came from both sides, shooting. Jack fell to the ground. He grabbed his shoulder. He just couldn't feel it. How? Hey, fell down next to him to take cover behind a car, buddy. I'll live. He pulled a gun from behind his belt. The fight was not for life. Many of them just did not come out of it alive. Get to the cars, the man in charge shouted. But Jack, Sam looked in the direction of the enemy. I said to the cars, then we'll deal with these creeps. He turned and looked at the asphalt, where several lifeless bodies lay. Everyone in the car was silent. No one wanted to talk about what had happened. One thing was clear, there was no need to ever rush into anything. Those guys were saved by the effect of surprise. They saw where and how Jack's men were standing. To the restaurant, the young man said sharply to the driver. They turned, stopped in front of a beautiful building. Jack got out of the car. His cronies followed him. Quiet music was playing in the room. No one was there. Waiter, Jack called irritably, because there was no one in the room at all. Now, a woman's voice was heard. And now she came out from around the corner. The young man fixed his eyes on her. A tall girl with a chiseled figure. Short black hair, snow-white skin, red lips, and a short skirt made her irresistible. Mine, Jack turned to his companions. What do you want? The girl approached and began to smile. You. The young man grabbed her by the waist and pulled her closer to him. What are you doing? I'll call the guards. She was afraid. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. He sat her down next to him. I can't sit here, she looked back. With me, everything is allowed. He looked at her and admired her. They ordered. When everything was on the table, Jack poured in shots to memorialize those who didn't come back with them tonight. Beauty, do you have a name? The waitress sat with them as they did so. Inga, she said, looked at him and smiled. What a beautiful name, and I'm Jack. I feel like you and I were made for each other. He nuzzled his nose into her neck. I think you'd have to know a person a little bit to say that, she coquetted. I don't need anything. I can see everything. He pressed himself against her again. Inge liked that kind of treatment. She had wanted someone to like her for a long time. Today was her first shift at the restaurant, and such luck. They sat at the table until the evening, and then Jack stood up and held out his hand to Inge. Are you with me? He asked. If he says that, he's not asking about tonight. He's asking about forever, whispered someone behind Inge. Yes, she gave him her hand and got up from her seat. He nodded his head. That meant no one was getting in the car with him. The two of them went there alone. The girl looked out the window. They drove past various stores and other storefronts. It seemed to her that this man would do anything for her. She would be happy in this life. Jack was generous. He spared nothing for his girl, buying clothes, flowers, gold, anything she wanted. Inga didn't know what he did, but it didn't matter to her. She simply idolized her young man. Does it hurt? She approached him when he entered the apartment. Go away, he could have snapped at her, but Inga didn't notice it. Let it pass her ears. Jack, let me blow on it, she said at him affectionately. Inga, there's nothing there. He wrinkled his nose as he moved his hand. Why are you doing all this? What if they kill you? That was what the girl feared more than anything. Spit, he glared at her until she did. I'll go. She went to the kitchen. Bring something to drink, he asked in a loud voice. Right now, Inga was happy to do anything for him. And let's get married. He took her in his arms. They had been together for almost 6 months. Sure, she kissed him on the nose. Then I'm telling the guys to make sure it's all good. He set her on the floor, slapped his palm on her butt, and stared after her. What are you doing? She turned around and made big eyes. To buy a wedding dress back then, you had to have quite a few connections or try really hard, but Jack had both. He made a couple of calls, and the next day Inga was trying on a white dress. So it's big for you, sat next to her friend Oksana. She thought it would be just Are you stupid? It can be sewn, but no one else has it. Only me, she shouted at her friend. And don't yell at me, the girl got up, came to Inga and started to pull the fabric. Yes, this will be just right. They looked in the mirror. Jack was getting ready too. He bought a suit. He really didn't want to wear a tie. I feel like I'm going to put all this on, and then you'll put me in a coffin, he said. What are you talking about? Said his witness and best friend, Billy. All right, help me. The groom stood in front of him to tie his tie. What's there to do? The guy was twirling 2 ribbons in his hands. Oh, all right. Jack pulled it all off. Who made up that I have to wear a tie? That's right, supported his friend. They were ready. The cars were decorated too. Now all that was left was to pick up the bride and drive to the registry office. The groom could not embarrass himself in front of his friends and the rest of the gang, so the best restaurant in town was ordered. The wedding party sang and sang until the morning, and the next day the guests who urgently wanted okroshka and brine. Well, wife, now I need an hair, kissed her in the evening young man. There will be for you an hair and Harris. Inga laughed rinningly. Well, I'm on business. He went out and slammed the door. Not even 3 months later, as the girl realized that she was expecting a child, and she informed her husband about it. See, you can have it anytime you want. He was drunk. Were you with the girls? She pulled a hair off his jacket. Look, don't start, huh? He turned to her. What do you mean, no start? She moved closer to him. If you want to have everything, and you were nothing for it, do not start, advised the husband to his wife. It was the first time Inga had seen him like this. She backed away, thinking it was better for her to stay away. You my wife, I will always come back here. And women are women. He went to his room. Such a turn, Inga did not consider such a turn in her fate. She didn't know what her husband was doing, but she knew that he had a lot of money, an apartment and more than several cars. How are you? Jack asked her at breakfast. It could have been better. She didn't look up at him. Oh, are we offended? He pulled his chair closer to her. Don't be. She took his hand off her knee. Okay, he stood up and walked away again. The girl looked out the window at him walking to his car. The pregnancy and delivery had been easy. Jack, as always, had put his wife in the best hospital there was at the time. Well, hello, son. Jack greeted his wife and child from the maternity hospital. Inga saw that a lot of people had arrived. They were all family friends. Thank you, she kissed her spouse as he handed her a bouquet of flowers. They arrived home, where in one of the rooms stood an assembled crib, a table, and a small dresser. The mother immediately put the baby down and began to make everything to make them comfortable here. What are you doing? Jack entered the room. Like, a place for me and my son. She stopped and looked at him. There is no me and my son. There is us and my son. This is his room and he will be here alone. The man put the point. Inga was upset about this, but she realized that it was better not to argue with her husband. She spent her days in her son's room, and at night she went to her husband's room. Jack, I think I'm expecting a baby again, she whispered to him one evening. Arnold wasn't even 2 years old at the time. I'm just glad of that. He kissed her neck. Times had come to a point where it was very hard for ordinary people to live, and the Brawls got kind of pissed off. They started opening different firms, buying up everything, and the guns got tougher. Don't leave the house today, Jack warned his wife. Where are you going? She grabbed his arm. And I have to. He opened the door and left. Inga was very worried about her spouse. Over the past 2 months, they had already buried 4 friends. It was time to give birth. It was not scary, but exciting. Everything went exactly the same as the first time. Now the couple had a daughter, Julia. Billy came to meet Inga from the hospital. Why not Jack? The girl's eyes were very big. She was afraid to hear the worst thing in her life. Because he's being shepherded. Looked Billy in the rearview mirror. I see. Inga leaned back in her seat and exhaled. They arrived home. Her husband was there. He greeted his wife and daughter, kissed her, and gave her flowers. I need you. Jack approached Inga a couple months after Julia showed up. Yes, she was always ready. Let's go. I asked a woman. She'll watch the kids. He pulled her. Where to? The woman didn't understand. Soon you'll understand everything. They left the apartment, went downstairs, got into the car. We are now going to go sign the documents. Do not ask unnecessary questions, he warned her. I understand. She never asked anything unnecessary. When all matters were settled, Jack locked himself in his office and did not come out for a long time. Inga went to the phone, made sure no one was listening, and dialed Billy's number. Hello, she whispered. What? Does Jack know you're calling? He immediately asked a question. No. Tell him what's coming up. She realized long ago. Tomorrow there will be a big shoot. Probably no one will come back. After these words, he immediately hung up. Inga cried how she was alone with two small children in such a cruel world. It was unbearable to sit and just watch your husband prepare to die. Talk to me, she asked him. Not now. He turned away to avoid looking her in the eye. When tomorrow, she stared at him. What do you know? He guessed. Practically nothing. It's very serious, she sniffed. That's all. You don't need to know more. He still didn't turn to her. And he left. No kiss, no hug. Inge was offended. At home, the man did not return. The wife did not know what to do. She did not sleep, went from room to room. In the morning, when she lay down for a while, the doorbell rang. Inga jumped out of her seat like a stunned person and ran to open the door. A stranger stood outside the door. Inga? He looked at her. Yes, and who are you? Her legs became cotton. She realized that she was about to faint. Alexander. He made a gesture to show that he wanted to enter the apartment. Yes, of course. She let him pass her by. Yesterday, you probably know, there was a massacre at the abandoned factory. Only he and Billy survived from Jack's crew. But Sirioba's injuries are very serious. He's in the hospital, and Jack was taken. The young man lowered his head. How taken? Inga shrieked and started to get nervous. I don't know the details. I was only told to tell you about it. He left the apartment, went down the stairs and left, and the woman remained standing in the hallway. She went into the room to the children. Arnold was 6 and Julia was 3. She sat down on the couch that stood there, tears streaming from her eyes. Why hadn't he bothered to protect herself? Why had he let this happen? Mommy, what's wrong? Her daughter sat up next to her. Everything is fine, sleep. She looked at Arnold. He frowned and did not want to talk to anyone about anything. Inga waited for the trial and what would be assigned to her husband. The sentence was cruel, but the lawyers tried. They managed to reduce the sentence by 6 years. Jack had only 9 years left to serve. Don't cry. One of the wives of those who died pressed Inga to her breast. 9 years, she told herself. Inga, pull yourself together. The woman slapped her. What? She grabbed her face. Nothing. My husband died. I have children at home and everything else, and you are killing yourself, she shouted at the whole corridor. I'm sorry. She didn't know what else to say. She returned home. Nothing was interesting. The children came. She fed them, did laundry, cleaned up, did everything else. She was in no mood. Hello, she came to the phone in the evening. It had been 3 years since Jack had had his trial. You didn't wake her up? Billy called her. No, just put the kids to bed. She lied. Of course, she'd been asleep for a while. Can I come over to your place? Why are you avoiding it? Asked the guy. Okay. The girl finally gave in. To be honest, she liked this guy since the first time they met, but she'd never told anyone about it. If Jack chose her, she'd stay with him. She'd never been alone with Billy because she was afraid of herself. But now, he'd asked to come over. Hi, he stood on the doorstep with flowers. Why? She looked at the bouquet. Why, you're a woman, and you like flowers. He was talking nonsense. Come in, she took the bouquet and put it in a vase. How are you here? The young man came into the room. As you can see, she waved her hands. Until now, Inga had saved on everything, lived on the money that was still from Jack, and his friends helped whoever they could. Yes, not much. He listened to Inga's story. What did you want? She wanted him to leave. Just to meet, to talk, to see you. He came closer to her. Billy, you're his best friend. She looked into his eyes. And what should best friends do? The right thing to do, the right thing to support at any moment. He finished and pressed his lips to hers. The woman's body so missed the man's caresses, she sagged toward him. Billy picked her up in his arms and carried her to the couch. Don't, she whispered, but she couldn't tear herself away from his lips. You're so beautiful. He undid the buttons of her blouse. They kissed. Billy was so tender, and at some point Inga felt someone watching them. She turned her head toward the door. Arnold was standing there. I hate you, he said, grabbed something off the table and threw it at the couple. Son. She jumped up, but he'd already gone to his room. Don't mind him. He's just a kid. He'll forget. Billy pulled her back. What? Practically 10 years old, little, you name it. She didn't know what to do now. Okay, if you want, I can say your daddy went and left your mommy and I'll help you with everything. He put on his jeans. When is Jack coming out? She stared unblinking at the man. When it does, everyone will have forgotten everything by now, laughed Billy. Since he offered, Inga didn't refuse. The children and she would be provided for again. And she liked Billy. A week later, they moved in with Billy. Where are you going? The man asked her as she gathered in the hallway. To Jack's, she looked puzzled. To Jack's, forget that name, you're my woman now, he said simply. Then he would realize everything at once. Inga was afraid. Calm down, everything will be all right, I'm near. He came to her and helped her take off her coat. Of course, Billy was very self-confident. Arnold grew up a mean boy. He hated his mother because she betrayed his father, and he felt even more anger toward her new suitor. Why are you looking at me like that? Billy asked him when they were all sitting at the table together. Traitor, how could you? He trusted you with everything. You were his best friend, the boy said through gritted teeth. You're too young to talk about such things. The man smiled back. I'll grow up and kill you, the boy promised him. All right, agreed Billy. And so they lived. Julia was a quiet girl. She never fully understood why her brother hated these people. She loved her mother, and she was neutral toward Billy. But their quiet life ended when Jack came back. He was no longer the kind uncle who loved his wife and children. His son had written to him long ago to tell him what had become of his wife. All these years he dreamed of looking his friend and his wife in the eye. Well, weren't you waiting? He was standing in the doorway when Billy opened it. Jack, hi. He reached out his hands to him, but was immediately punched in the face. What are you doing? I meant well. His friend looked at him. Yeah, you did. He nodded and went inside the apartment. Inga was sitting in the room talking to her daughter. She saw Julia's eyes get big, turned around, flinched. Jack, what are you doing here? She knew this was going to be bad. It's you, what are you doing here? Pack up quickly and let's go home, he yelled. Where's Billy? She was shaking. Ha, show you him? The man returned to the corridor. He took his former friend by the scruff of the neck and threw him into the room. Inga saw that between his legs were all bloody. What have you done? She was so frightened that she didn't even think about the children seeing all this. The sooner you pull yourself together, the sooner I'll call an ambulance, he smirked. That's it, we're ready. Call it in, and she thought. She could come back for her things next time. Whatever you say, darling. He went to the phone and dialed the right number. After that, together with the whole family, they went to the place where they used to live. And how could you think of such a thing? To leave me, ha? And to whom? To Seryoga? He could not calm down. Jack, I'm sorry. I thought it would be better for the kids. She lowered her head. Trust me, no one will be better off now. He laughed again. They arrived. They got out of the car. Inga could see people walking by. She wanted to shout for them to stop and help her, but there was no way to do it. Daddy, how glad I am that you came. Arnold did not leave him. Yes, son, but I'm not very glad. He turned his head toward his wife. She was standing by the mirror. What are you looking at? He shouted sharply. What are you doing? She turned around and didn't understand. He hit her on the back of the head with force. She banged her face against the mirror, shattering it. Those were her first scars. Arnold, call an ambulance, she begged her son. You call it. He stood watching his mother bleed to death. Why are you so angry? She was crying. She was hurt and offended by everything that was happening. Inga saw that her daughter was dialing a number. A few minutes later, their doorbell rang. The doctors were horrified at what had become of the woman's face. But she didn't say who had done it. Slipped on the floor and fell, she told the medic. Yes, she nodded. How bad? She looked up at the medic. Badly, he nodded. Scars. Tears came to her eyes again. There will be. The medic didn't hide it. She returned home with a bandaged face. Julia came to her. She sat next to her mom and stroked her arm. What, Mommy, are you paying for your mistakes? Arnold stood in the doorway. What did I ever do to you? She didn't understand. It hurt to speak, so she turned away and didn't want to say or hear anything else. Jack was busy again with some business. His capital had already increased during the time he had been in the out-of-the-way places, and now they were increasing. He was buying apartments, renting them out, cars, reselling them, whatever he could get his hands on. Why do you put up with all this? Get away from him, Julia said, when the years of school were coming to an end. Do you think he'd let me do that? The woman's body was a wreck. Her husband did nothing but beat her, beating her, tearing her skin, putting out cigarette butts on her legs, back, and neck. Inga cried, but it didn't help. She endured. Julia felt sorry for her mom, but there was nothing she could do either. The girl wanted so much to get out of this house quickly, not to see all these faces surrounding her again, except her mom, of course. I wish you, daughter, never to experience such a thing. Her mother kissed Julia. Don't come home unnecessarily. Julia hugged her mother. She didn't need anything from her father or anyone else. She had finished school. Now she was about to enroll. She wasn't going home. Arnold never left his father's side for a minute. When he felt his shoulder next to him, he was so arrogant and cocky. When the man wasn't around, he was silent all the time. We should change the car. He hinted to his father that he needed a new car. I'll take care of it myself. The man stopped him. In the evening, when the table was set, the two of them sat at it. Inga did not come out. Why do you put up with her? Arnold asked Jack. Don't you know? The man was very surprised, for he knew that his son stuck his nose in everywhere he could. Believe me, no, thought he. So for love, bit off a piece of meat the young man. You saw her, what love, and what a beauty she was. The man savored these words. So why? The boy kept up. Then, when the hunt for me began, I signed everything over to your mother, so that I had nothing to take from me. It's a good thing she didn't know what she was signing to, or they'd have ripped me off with Billy, he said, his jowls moving. I can see why you're so fond of her. Arnold got up from the table. He'd been out a lot lately, traveling to different parties. He didn't arrive alone this morning. Dad, meet Diana. He introduced the girl. For an hour or all day? Mickey asked. You what? This is my girlfriend, said the son, offended. Ah, well, if it's a girl, then come in. He pointed to the sofa, which stood in the living room. Diana got acquainted with the mother of her young man. Oh, she came out of the bathroom when Inga was walking down the hall. Don't be afraid, said the woman in a hoarse voice. What's wrong with you? Diana looked at her. Husband and son tried, she said openly. God, the girl even lost the power of speech. Think many times before becoming his wife, Inga warned her. Excuse me, she went to her room. Slava liked that he now had a girlfriend. He spent a lot of time with her, wanted her to be his wife, but also that it was very early to propose to her. Arnold, why don't we go for a walk today? Diana chirped cheerfully. Okay, we'll go for a walk, just a little later. He didn't want to go anywhere, just to lie on the bed with her. All right, suit yourself, then I'll go. She already wanted to leave the room, but Arnold didn't let her. He threw a slipper and the doors closed. You're not going anywhere. I told you later. He looked at her and got angry. Slavachka, what are you doing? Diana was scared. Nothing, Diana, he mocked her. She walked over and sat down on the bed next to the guy. He grabbed her arm and pulled her to him with a sharp pull. It hurts, she wrinkled her nose. Me too, he started kissing her. Diana did not push him away. On the contrary, she began to reciprocate. The girl realized that one wrong action and he would just throw her to the trash. "Hello, can I sit here?" The girl came to Inga's room. "Did you hit her?" she guessed. "No, just a fight." The girl averted her eyes. "Yes, I know how he quarrels," sighed the woman. They sat in the room for a few minutes in silence. "What am I to do?" asked Diana at last. "Nothing. Run or endure for the rest of your life." She pointed with her hand to her face. After that, the woman and Inga began to communicate well. "Arnold proposed to me. She showed me the ring." "You'd be a fool to marry him," the mother said quite seriously. "But I love your son," she said confusedly. "Yes, I thought I did too." Inga smiled a little. "Will you help me prepare for the gala?" She'd hoped for the woman's support. Of course, the woman never refused anyone. But the next day, Arnold announced that there would be no celebration. They would just get married and sit here as a family. Would we invite Inga? The bride was sure of it. Of course not. The son wrinkled his nose. Good. Again, the girl swallowed everything. On the weekend, they went to the registry office. If Diana wore a beautiful dress and arranged her own hair, Arnold was in stretchy sweatpants and a t-shirt. "Could you dress normally?" She didn't understand. "And so it will do. You love me not for money and not for clothes," he winked at her. "What a fool you are. Why are you like your father? Your mother has suffered so much and you are there." Diana got angry. They signed. They were now husband and wife. They came home, as Arnold wanted. There was a huge table in the hall, bursting with hors d'oeuvres. Only Jack was there to greet them. "Well, hello, children." He hugged the two at once. "Let's eat already," sat down at the table the groom. "And I have a present for you." The father left the room. He came back with a box, handed it to his son. It was the keys to a new car. "Thank you, Dad. I've wanted it for so long." The young man rejoiced at the gift like a child. Diana looked at the two relatives and waited for something to be given to her. But it turned out that there were no more presents. It was a shame. In the evening, she went to Inga's room and took some cake to treat her. "Thank you, my daughter. But in the morning, you'll realize what kind of husband you've chosen for yourself," the woman said. "No, we'll be fine," the girl assured her. Yes, the woman stood and nodded. She knew her son better than anyone and what he was capable of. "I can't even imagine that your own son could do this to you," Diana told the woman. "Believe me, he may not have done much physically, but mentally he was killing me to the point where I just wanted to lie down and do nothing else." Inga turned away to the window. Perhaps she could cry now, if there were still tears left. As Diana said goodbye to her, she left the room. The girl had no idea that all the things she had said today were to be experienced by her. "Where have you been?" She entered the room and heard the voice of her drunken husband. "Arnold, what are you doing?" She came up to him like a pussycat. "What?" That's what he hit her in the face. She flew right back to the door. The girl was lying there, looking at the young man with frightened eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" She started to get up, but he wouldn't let her. "You went to see her, didn't you? Do you want to become like her?" "Only I turn away immediately to my friend, you will go away." Stood over her and spoke haughtily. "What friend? You don't even have any friends." Diana didn't understand anything. "No friends." Again she received a blow in the side. "Soon will appear. Do not worry. And now go, wash up, and go to bed. I'm tired." Diana stood under the hot shower. Tears flowed down her cheeks. She didn't know what to do now. Inga was right when she said he was like that. Why did she take this step? Why did she marry him? Why did she pretend to some riches? And life, what about it? She couldn't stay in that shower forever. She had to get out at some point anyway. And Diana was out of there. Arnold was already asleep on the bed. She breathed a sigh of relief and lay down next to him. In the morning, he got up as if nothing had happened, kissed his wife, and told her that they were going down for breakfast together now. She couldn't bear to look at him. Right after breakfast, she went to her mother-in-law's house again. "Oh, did my predictions come true?" She looked at the girl's lip. "Yes, you were right. He was drunk last night, and everything happened as you said." Diana is ashamed to admit it. Inga came up to her, pressed her against her, stroked her head. At that moment, the door opened. On the threshold stood the son. What are you teaching her here?" shouted at his mother Arnold. "It's time for you to calm down. I'm not teaching anyone anything, and I myself did nothing wrong. I only wanted you and Julia to be happy," she told him in a calm voice. He grabbed her by the hair and pushed her. Her mother fell down. She didn't want to get up because she knew that this blow would be followed by another one. Arnold grabbed his wife's hand and they left that room. Inga got up. She didn't know what to do, so she went to her husband's office. "Jack, can I come in?" she asked at the door. "What do you want?" He looked at her sideways. "I want to talk to you." She sat down in the chair across from him. "Talk. No one's stopping you," he told her in a rough voice. "Why do you keep me here? Let me go. You are doing well. Why do you need me here in this house?" The woman did not understand. "Why, and you still don't understand why I keep you here?" And he told her all about the documents and the money. "I'll rewrite it all back," she said. "No, darling, I don't want to lose everything I've worked so hard for," he laughed in her face. "Am I to suffer with you for the rest of my life? So I will do it all before, without your help." She abruptly turned around and went to the exit. Come on, you'll only make our lives easier," her husband said to her. She ran down the steps and cried. She would never wish such a fate as hers on anyone. In her room, she opened the closet, took out a sash, tied it to the radiator. And the worst part was that she didn't have the fortitude to do it to herself. She sat down helplessly by that radiator and cried in her voice. In the evening, when father and son were conferring in his study, Diana came to her again. "Why did you come here again? Didn't you get enough of it last time?" "I'm quiet. They are in a meeting in the office." She pressed her finger to her lips. At that moment, the girl's eyes slid to the floor. She saw the belt. "Go." Her mother-in-law pushed her towards the door. "You what?" She stared at Inga. "Nothing. Didn't have the guts," the woman admitted. Diana walked out of her room, eyes widened. She imagined what could happen now. Would she have to suffer the same way for the rest of her life? The girl cried for the first time in this house just for fun, out of thought. She went out into the garden, where it was very beautiful. Arnold joined her a few minutes later. "Where are you going?" he asked casually. "Nowhere, I just decided to walk here." She looked at the green bushes. "If you go anywhere without my knowledge, you'll be fine," he said knowingly. "Arnold, I don't want to be your wife anymore." She looked at him pleadingly. "Why not? You've been pleasing me, all to get me to propose. And now what's happened?" He made a perplexed face. "Let me go, please." She put her hands together. "As soon as I get bored of you, you'll go straight to all four sides." He turned around and went into the house. "Fool," Diana said to herself and followed her husband. After that, further married life consisted of one thing. He came home. Diane slept with him. She was no good for anything else, according to Arnold. When there was no one else in the house, he and Inga would gather in the kitchen. They might even drink wine and gossip. But that was very rare. Usually both of them were in their rooms. Julia was by this time well into her studies. She knew that she could only rely on herself, so she had to get a profession. "Did you get in?" asked her friend, whom they had met on the train on their way here. "I don't know." Julia stood with her back to the board where the results were hanging. "Girlfriend, I congratulate you, and I got in just to another college. It's across the street." She pointed her finger at the building. At this point, Julia was finally able to tune in and turned around. She had indeed gotten in. "Shall we celebrate?" Nika pressed her. "Okay, just not tonight. I have a headache," she complained. "Well, how boring you are," took offense girlfriend. "Tomorrow or at the weekend we'll go somewhere," Julia said. "Aren't you going home?" Nika asked. "No, I don't want to talk to my parents," the girl confessed. "I see, but I'm going. So it's not fate." They laughed together. Julia did not want to shirk her studies. She chose the profession herself. She entered it herself, and now she wanted to finish it herself. But sometimes fate gives surprises you don't expect. They had a celebration at the college, dedication to students. It was fun, a concert, and afterwards, a disco. Julia had so much fun that she forgot about the time. When she looked at her watch, it was past 11. She ran to the dorm. No, the stern janitor mothballed her from the window. "Well, pleased," the girl begged her. "I won't let her in." The woman stepped away from the window and walked away. Julia looked around. It was dark and cold outside. She didn't know where to go. She wandered to the nearest five-story building, at least in the entryway to keep warm. There she sat down on the steps and dozed off. "Who are you?" A guy came up. "Nobody," the girl snapped at him. "Well, nobody. What are you doing here?" He sat down next to her. You could hear that he smelled of alcohol. "Leave me alone. They didn't let me into the dorm, so I'm sitting here." She didn't want to talk. "Let's go." He took her hand. "Where to?" She didn't want to go, so she started to pull away. "Don't be afraid, silly." He looked at her and smiled. Julia followed him. She wasn't. At least she'll be warm. "Here, I live alone. You can stay here." He led her into his apartment. "Thank you," she said quietly. The guy went to the kitchen, put the kettle on, went out into the corridor and watched her take off her shoes and jacket. "Let's go. I'll make tea," he called her. They walked through, sat down at the table. The young man made tea, put it in front of Julia. "Carlo," he sat down opposite. "Julia." She took a small sip of tea and burned herself. "So here's to introductions." He raised his cup. "Aha." She sat back and looked into hers. Carlo bedded the girl on the couch. She didn't want to sleep, a little afraid. But as soon as her head touched the pillow, she just passed out. "Wake up, sleepyhead. You'll sleep through everything." The guy woke her up in the morning. "Yes." Julia jumped up. "Where is she? What's wrong with her?" "I had a lot of questions in my head." "Don't worry, you haven't been drinking," he laughed. "I have to go to school." She started packing the things she had taken off yesterday before going to bed. "Will you meet me today?" he asked as he walked her to the door. "I don't know." She looked up at him. At that moment, something clicked inside. Why hadn't she noticed yesterday that he was so handsome? "Well, I know where you live. I'll come get you." He opened the door for her. Julia came out. From that moment, the girl couldn't help thinking about Alexei. She waited for him, but he did not come. The next day, she also waited for him, but again, he was not there. "What's going on with you?" Sarah, her roommate, asked her. "I think I'm in love." She didn't want to tell anyone how she felt. "With whom?" She was surprised because Dashka was either at school or in the dormitory all day long. "Remember when I didn't sleep at home?" the neighbor looked. "Yes," she nodded. "So Julia told me everything." "You have to be so naive. It's good. At least nothing happened in the apartment." Shook her head neighbor. "You don't understand anything." The girl was offended. "Okay, but you understand a lot." She turned her back to the wall. A month passed and Carlo never showed up. Even though the houses were next to each other, Julia never saw him. "There came to you." Went up to their room on duty. "Who?" surprised the girl. She knew that a friend from a neighboring college could come, but she said she would be busy. "Some guy." The girl smiled. Julia's heart beat faster in her chest. She put on her slippers and went out. "Hi." Carlo was standing there, flowers in his hands. "Hello." She walked up to him, looking around to make sure no one saw anything. It seemed to her that everyone knew that she had been waiting for him for so long, and he had come only now. "Why are you so pensive?" he asked her. "No, I'm fine." Julia smelled the flowers. "Will you come with me for a walk?" he asked her. "I don't know," she shrugged. "Come on, I'll tell you where I've been." He pulled her by the arm, just like that time in the entryway. "Okay, I need to change." She took her hand out of his and ran upstairs. "What, you're here?" the roommate asked. "And I'll ask you to be jealous in silence." Julia laughed and left the room. They walked through the streets of the city. Carlo chattered incessantly. "I'm sorry I didn't come. I was sent on a business trip, so I was there all this time." He turned to her, and now he was walking ahead of her. "Why are you telling me this?" "I don't care." She made an indifferent look. "Thought you were waiting." The guy saddened. "Come on." "Waited a couple days." She told him the secret. "Well, I'm here, and now I'm not going anywhere." Carlo was so happy, talking all the time, laughing. "Okay." They had been outside for hours. The girl was freezing. "Shall we go to my place?" he asked her as they walked towards the dorm. "Let's not tonight." She didn't want to rush things. "Okay, whatever you say." He led her to the door, and then the young people stood opposite each other for a long time. Julia was thinking, even waiting for him to kiss her, and Carlo was in thought. He certainly wanted that kiss, but he was afraid to scare her off. They just said goodbye. The heart in the girl's chest was pounding, even pounding. She thought everyone could hear it. She had finally and irrevocably fallen in love with him. Now Carlo came for her every evening. They either went for a walk or went to his place. "Why don't you want to move? It's better in an apartment than in a dormitory." Every time he asked. "You know, I'm used to it." She was telling the truth. "Okay, I'll wait." He was stubborn. "So wait," she said, like a queen. But after New Year's Eve, the girl agreed and they started living together. "How happy I am, you can't even imagine." The guy woke up every morning. "Enough for me to talk about it. I'm happy too," she told him and kissed him after that. With her parents, Julia never communicated. She didn't think she needed to. She felt sorry for her mom. She thought she was going to get on her feet and take her in. "Why are you so sad?" Carlo had seen her like that a lot. "No, you just thought she was looking away so he wouldn't see her tears." "Well, that's your business. I won't interfere." After saying that, he climbed out from under the blanket and went to the kitchen. Julia looked at her lover and could not understand how such a chance meeting could bring her to such a wonderful man. "You don't know anything about him," her friend told her. "So what? I can see the man," Julia countered. "Okay, that's your business." The girl dismissed her. From that moment on, Julia stopped talking to everyone from her past circle. She gave all of herself to Carlo. "Why don't you ever talk about your parents?" Carlo asked her once. "I don't want to. I'm not doing well there." She didn't want to deceive him. "Okay, I'm not bothering you." He kissed her. One day, Julia went to the store. On the way, she met a classmate. They walked together, talking about something on the way. Carlo came home at that moment, knew where his girlfriend went out to meet her and saw this picture. "Who was that?" he asked her at home. "An acquaintance we studied together." She was sorting out bags. And why she did not pay attention to this situation, Julia still does not know. In the summer, after the first course, the young man proposed to his beloved. She, of course, agreed. "What kind of wedding do you want?" he asked her a week after the proposal. "None," she laughed. "What do you mean? You're turning me down?" You could see the guy was angry. "I just don't want it." She was honest with him. "Oh, you scared him," he exhaled. They filed the application. Julia was very worried that she couldn't tell her mom about it, but she thought she would definitely visit her sometime. After the marriage, the young people didn't go anywhere. They just went on with their lives. "We're so boring," Julia said to Carlo. "What do you miss?" he asked. "I don't know." She sat on the couch and shrugged. "If you want, you can go out," he suggested. Well, she was going to ask him about it, but she didn't have the guts. The girls had been asking her to go out for a long time, and this weekend she promised them she would. That day she came home from school and started to get dressed up. "In this skirt you will not go anywhere," stood in the doorway of the room husband. "Why?" The girl didn't understand. It wasn't short. "Because I said so." He was insistent. "Okay." She obediently changed her clothes. As Julia walked out, Carlo kissed her, said love, and closed the doors. It was so nice to get away from this domestic routine. Julia just danced. She didn't think about anything. She rested her mind and body. This evening she enjoyed her freedom. She was coming home and didn't expect what was waiting for her there. "I'm home." She entered the apartment. "Did you have a good time?" Her drunken husband came out into the hallway. "Carlo, you let me go, didn't you?" She didn't know what was going on. "Yes, I did. I thought you'd say no, that you'd spend time with me." His tongue was slurring. "What's going on?" She went into the room. There was a table by the couch, and on it were some shots and a bottle. "I'm out. As you can see, I'm having fun." "Who were you with?" He grabbed her arm. "What are you doing? You're hurting me." Fear appeared in her eyes. She remembered how her father used to beat her mother when she was a child. "Oh, you." He pushed her. Julia didn't wait for him to continue. She grabbed her shoes and ran out of the apartment. She didn't know where to go. There was only one option, the dorm. "Hello, can't you let me in?" she asked the janitor. If only for a visit. She looked at the desk clerks. "Thank you." Julia began to think about what she should do. When the former roommate came out to her, she quickly told her everything, asked her to find a way out. "So here is the address. There lives my good acquaintance. Say that from me and tell everything." She gave her a piece of paper. "Thank you." The girls hugged each other. Julia was scared to go because there was a guy there again, not a girl. But she had no other choice, so she went. Hello, they met. Julia told Michael everything. He stepped in and let her spend the night. Thank you. She thanked him in the morning she left. She thought she would never need his help again. Just as Julia thought, Carlo found her at her studies. While they were in public, he spoke to her affectionately, asked her questions, but without pressure. At home, it started all over again. The only consolation was that he was sober. Why do you behave like this? Julia could not understand in her head. Such a nice and caring, before the wedding. A young man became inadequate as soon as he put a ring on his finger. And you? He asked her a counter question. What about me? She looked at him. The conversation was not working. Going everywhere, unknown with whom and where you sleep. Tell me, where were you today? He came very close. At a friend's, she didn't want to lie because it could be worse. You see, at a friend's, he emphasized the last syllable. Julia went to the kitchen. She didn't want to talk. It was all empty. The girl wouldn't prove anything. Carlo didn't go after her. After that, they didn't talk for about a week. And then Carlo came home with flowers. What's the occasion? Julia came out into the hallway. I'm sorry, my love. I overreacted. He handed her the bouquet. Good, she really thought, that he understood and realized everything. But it didn't last long. There was a corporate party at her husband's work. You're coming with me tomorrow, he told her. I have an extreme session coming up. I can't not prepare for it. She looked up at her husband. Nothing. One evening will not decide anything. Everyone will be there with their wives, insisted the young man. All right, Julia agreed with him. The next day, she put on a beautiful dress, painted her eyes and lips, and went out to Carlo. Wow, what a beauty you are. He opened his arms to hug her. Let's go already, she laughed. The evening was fun. At first, everyone was just sitting around the tables, making speeches. Then the music started, and everyone got on the dance floor. Julia tried to behave so no one would say anything to her husband. How I envy Carlo, a representative man approached her. Yes, Julia turned to him, a smile on her face. Yes, at that moment slow music played. The man held out his hand to her. She didn't refuse. They started moving to the tune. At some point, Julia saw her husband. He was standing there, all red. His jaundices were going in different directions. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt our dance, Julia said quickly to the stranger. What a pity, he saw her off with his eyes. What do you think you're doing? Boiled Carlo. He was pretty drunk again. Beloved, calm down. She was afraid that the scandal would start right here. Let's go home. They walked towards the exit. The man who had just danced with Julia caught up with them. Sorry, you left it. He held out the hairpin to her. Thank you, she smiled. At this point, the young man couldn't take it anymore. He swung around and punched the man in the jaw with all his might. The man went flying, and for some reason, the image of Billy, whom her father had dragged into the room in bloody pants, came to Julia's mind. He yelled when he saw Julia running away from him. He caught up with her, waited for a cab to pull up, put her in the car, and they drove home. As always, Carlo was silent in front of anyone, but at home, he was on the loose. Stop. She yelled at the whole house, but no one could hear her. What's wrong with you? In the morning, Carlo went into the kitchen to get a drink of water. Julia was lying on the couch. When he didn't hear an answer, he walked over. He pulled the blanket open and recoiled, sat down next to her, grabbed his head. Julia lay there, her face resembling a bloody mess. What have I done? Carlo went to the phone and called an ambulance. Thank God, the girl was alive. They put her in the hospital. As soon as Julia felt a little better, could see and walk, without asking anyone, the girl just ran out of there. She drove home to her parents' house, thinking that if Carlo was there looking for her, her father would still intercede. Whatever their relationship, she's his daughter. Hey, she came in the house. What happened to your face? Her brother asked her from the door. Nothing. She walked up the steps to her mom's house. Julia rushed to her Inga. She first hugged and then pulled her daughter aside to look. It can't be, she cried. Maybe, apparently it's fate, she cried. Everything will be all right. Ask your father for help. He won't refuse, the mother advised. The father, when his daughter turned to him, thought of nothing better than to send her out of the country. First, they formalized their divorce, and then Julia flew abroad for a few months. As expected, Carlo arrived. It was unclear why he procrastinated so long. Inga assumed he simply hadn't visited his wife in the hospital. "Where's my wife?" He burst into the house and was immediately punched in the face. "This is my house, and only I can raise my voice here." Jack came out to him. "Where's Julia?" Carlo clamped his nose. "That's something you'll never know," said the man sternly. "What are you keeping a guest on the doorstep?" Came out to them. "Arnold, come in." They all sat together in the house. In Carlo's hands was a glass with something strong. "Tell me, what happened?" Julia's brother said. Carlo began to mutter to himself that he was jealous and drunk. He couldn't help himself. "And the last time I broke the CEO's face, I got fired, and I couldn't get over it." He looked up at them. "Yeah, the story." Jack looked at him. He didn't know what to do. "Okay, Julia's not home. Here's my card. Come on, buddy. Go home. Call me if you need anything." Arnold escorted him out of the house. Carlo drove home. He had new friends now. Inga continued her existence in the house with her husband, son, and daughter-in-law. They were communicating with the girl already openly. Jack and Arnold let the situation go. "Mom, I'm pregnant." Diane came to her room one day. "Don't tell him. Have an abortion," the woman begged her. "What are you talking about? I want this baby." Her daughter-in-law's eyes bulged. "You wanted to marry Arnold too?" The woman shook her head again. "No, I'll give him a son, and he will calm down." The girl stood her ground. As you know, Inge didn't care anymore. She was waiting for her husband to hit her someday so that she wouldn't wake up. Diana sat in her room. She wanted to share her joy with everyone. She decided to call an old friend. "Hello, Natalie," she said into the phone. "Diana, where have you been?" She was surprised to hear from her. "I got married and now I'm expecting a baby," she bragged. "How do you feel about us coming to visit you?" asked her friend. "I don't even know." She glanced at the door. "I don't want to hear anything. We'll come to your place tonight. You can meet your husband," Natalie said. "Arnold, we're having friends over tonight," she said quietly to her husband. "What friends do we have?" He was very surprised. "Mine from school." She thought he wouldn't mind. She had to socialize with someone. "Look at me." He gave her a look that sent shivers down her spine. Diana was glad he didn't forbid it. She got ready for the evening. Jack was frowning. Something had been weighing on him lately. "What's the party?" he asked. "We have friends coming," she said cheerfully, "and yes, you'll be a grandfather soon." After these words, she thought that the man would somehow be happy, but he just looked at her and passed by. "What did you just say?" Arnold was coming down the stairs. "Yes, you're going to be a dad. I wanted to surprise you." She expected her husband to hug or kiss her, but he, like his father, didn't react in any way. The friends arrived in the evening. When Diana saw that there were young men among them, she thought her husband would not be very happy. "Wow, what a house you have!" Natalie walked everywhere. Inga came down the hall. No one had warned her that there would be guests, so she was immediately embarrassed. "Who's that?" A startled Natalie approached her friend. "The mother-in-law," she said simply. "What's wrong with her face?" A common question that came up to everyone who saw her for the first time. "Ignore it," Diana asked her. "Okay." They continued the party. After the feast, everyone moved outside. There was going to be a kebab. "Diana, wow, you got the guy." He came up to her and slapped her. "What are you doing?" She looked back so that her husband did not see, but at that moment she ran into his gaze. "Friends, thank you for coming." Arnold immediately began to speak. "But we haven't cooked the meat yet." We're all upset. "We'll do it another time," Arnold promised. When everyone had left, he took his wife under his elbow and they returned to the house. His father was gone, away on business. "What do you think you're doing? You brought your lover into the house so you can see what a dear my husband is?" He attacked her. "What are you talking about?" Diana already knew how it would end. Inga heard shouting downstairs, came out of her room and went there. "Arnold, leave her alone. She's expecting a baby." She approached her son. "What? Who's yapping?" He turned to the woman. "Don't," shouted Diana. At that moment, the young man hit his mother in the face with such force that she flew to the stairs and bumped her head. "Don't what?" Arnold was already upset. "Don't touch." She covered herself with her hands, but it was too late. "You'll know how to bring men into the house." He sat down on the sofa. When neither his mother nor Diana got up from the floor, he got nervous. His father wasn't around to ask for advice. The young man stood up, walking over to the woman first, blood oozing from her head. "Get up," he prodded his wife. "Fuck you." Diana saw that she was bleeding too, only downstairs she understood. "Fuck you. I'll go to you now." And again the shock and darkness. The woman and the girl woke up in the hospital. Inga had a severe concussion and Diana had lost her baby. "What are you doing?" Jack started yelling at his son. "You weren't there. What was I supposed to do?" The boy whined. "Okay, we'll figure something out." He pulled out a briefcase. When the doctor came in to see Inge, she was lying there staring at him with empty eyes. "Will you be writing a statement?" he asked her. "What statement?" She pretended not to understand. "I see." He left the room. Diana was crying. She knew she didn't want to be with this man anymore, but how to get rid of him, she didn't understand. "I write a statement or we get a divorce." She gave him an ultimatum. "We'll see." He wanted to say something to her, but he turned and left the room. "We have to do something," Jack said to his son at home. "What do you mean?" Arnold didn't understand. "With your mother, she's got a bad headache. She won't do anything now," the man was sure. "What's the plan?" The young man was ready to listen. "First, you must divorce your wife. You do not need her, only problems," advised the father. "Well, I was going to do that myself," he admitted. "After that, find your new friend, Carlo, I think, who lived with Dashka. We will give him the most difficult task," the man said point by point. "Understood," Arnold smiled. After the conversation with his father, he began to immediately put the plan into practice. First, he went and negotiated a divorce. It didn't take long. "Hey," he walked into Diane's room. "What do you want?" She was very angry with him. "Here." He put an envelope of money on the table. "I filed for divorce, you're free. Here's some money for the first time." "Did he say everything?" She looked at him contemptuously. "Yeah, he didn't even say goodbye. He just walked out of the room, that's all." After that, he looked at his mother. She was lying in bed smiling. He realized what his father was talking about. Arnold left the hospital and immediately called Carlo. An unemployed guy could use the money. "You got it?" He talked to him. "Yes, as soon as you call, I will be at your place," promised the young man. That was the end of their agreement. It remained to wait for Inga to be discharged from the hospital. They didn't have to wait long. Not even 2 weeks later, she was already home. "Hi," Jack said hello to her. She just walked past him, humming something to herself. "Crazy," Arnold said it after her. "Shut up," his father put his finger to his lips. In the evening, Carlo arrived. "Now listen carefully," Jack began to say. "Now you go to your ex-mother-in-law. Tell her you want to talk. As if you feel bad after the divorce with Dashka. Cry, bring tea. Beforehand, dissolve this in hot liquid. No one will ever figure it out." After his words, Jack gave Carlo a capsule with a clear liquid. "Do I have to kill her?" The boy was frightened. "Think about it." Arnold showed him a thick envelope with money. "And why do you need it?" Did not understand the young man. "After her death, we will receive the inheritance," said Jack. "I see." Carlo understood everything now. Today, he spent the night in this house, and for tomorrow the plan was to be executed. Carlo went to Inga's room after lunch. He asked if he could come in. She smiled. "Hello." He entered then uninvited. "Come in." She sat him on a chair. "Do you remember me?" "I'm your daughter's ex-husband." He was nervous, and Inge sat looking at him, happiness on her face. And then Carlo started crying. How bad he felt, how tired he was, and all the other things Jack had told him. "How about some tea?" he asked. Wouldn't say no. She looked at him. Now he left the room. In the kitchen he did as he was told. "There's our tea." He brought a tray of cups and cookies into the room. "Look, I had a delicious roll in the cupboard," the woman asked. "Okay." He got up, but he didn't find any roll there. "Well, I have to go." They finished their tea. The young man got up from his seat and went to the door. At that moment, the woman just fell off her chair. Carlo came down the stairs. He was happy. Arnold handed him his fee. After that, he advanced home. "What now?" The son looked at his father. "We'll wait until night and take her out into the woods," the man said. Until then, Inga lay on the floor. All evening, Arnold agonized over what would happen to them if anything came to light. But he looked at Jack and realized that if he was calm, there was nothing to worry about. When night fell, they loaded the woman's body into the car and drove away. They drove far away so that no one they knew would find her. This would be fine, Jack said. His plan was to leave the woman here and report her missing a few days later. Doctors would confirm that she was insane, left home on her own, got lost, froze, and died. That's it, we have no more burdens. The man shook off his hands. You're right, they got in the car and drove home. Early in the morning, the forester went around his property, looking to see if anything was caught in the traps. When he reached the edge of the forest, he saw a beast lying on the ground and came closer. Lord, he began to be baptized. He sat down and looked at the woman. He didn't know what to do with her. The old man pulled up his wagon. He loaded the woman into it. He was afraid that he would be blamed for the death of this unfortunate woman. He saw that on the outskirts of the city, there was a place where homeless people were fed and hot lunches were brought to them. So he decided to take the woman there. Who are you? Inga opened her eyes, and several overgrown and bad-smelling people were leaning over her. We found you here, squeaked one of them. And who am I? She looked at her hands. She's not well at all, said an old man with a large beard. He might not have been an old man, but the look of him said so. Inga was lifted to her feet, dizzy and cold. She was shivering. Come with me. The same man held out his hand to her. Good. There was no tooth on tooth. Inge poured hot tea, so she joined the company. Don't you remember anything at all? Her new friends asked her. No, she shook her head and smiled all the time. Poor thing, everyone felt sorry for her. Everyone here was friendly. If food was brought in, pandemonium ensued. But when a cup of hot food fell into Inga's hands, she simply enjoyed it. She had a warm jacket. It was a few sizes too big, but it was so warm. Come on, a man called out to her. Apparently, he was not all right in the head either, because he kept telling everyone that he was an academician. With him, Inga began to communicate closely. They were always together, sleeping, eating. Where did you lose your fiancé? The volunteers laughed. Who brought hot lunches? None of your business, Inga answered them. Now she didn't look any different from her companions. She was wearing the same rags. It was impossible to walk in them, but no one offered her anything else. And where were you from? Sometimes Inga asked the boys, who were so kind as to pour tea and offer bread. From the city. They didn't want to talk to her. I used to live in the city too. The woman rolled her eyes. Good. They didn't believe it. In the evening, Steve, with whom Inga was always together, offered her a bottle. Where did you get it? The woman wondered. It's not there anymore. He squinted slyly and took a sip. Come on, Inga wanted to warm up. It was winter ahead. It was getting colder. After a short conversation, Steve suggested that Inga leave this company and live alone. Don't tell me you're taking me to your academic apartment, laughed the woman. Look at Hugh. What kind of academic would look at Hugh? He showed his toothless mouth as he smiled. But still, they made it. Moved closer to the city. Here you could beg by the subway and beg around caves. Well, aren't you sorry? Steve looked at his companion. Soon it will be winter. What are we going to do? Go to the basement? Inga asked him once. Why didn't you say anything before? Exactly, it's warm there. The man tapped himself on the forehead. They came to one of the houses. The cellar was open, not like in many other houses. They settled there for a while. Now Inga didn't refuse when Steve brought a bottle. Once she took not one sip, but two. What are you doing? He poked her in the chest. Leave me alone, the woman said in a drunken voice. Oh, you, he pushed her. Inga collapsed on her side, lay like that. Sometimes she saw the janitor sweeping the yard, thought that she could also. Maybe they would have allocated a place for housing. But she didn't dare to come up and ask. That's how she lived with Steve. What's up, old girl? He coming all stinky and wet. Where have you been? She was very hungry. He wanted to say something else, but he took a step, stumbled, and fell. Inga came out of the cellar. It was very cold. She wrapped herself in the same jacket that she had once gotten. The woman was walking down the street. Everyone was avoiding her. She was very hungry and warm. Inga did not know how long she wandered like that. She entered some yard. She wanted to find a cellar to warm up a little. She went to the entrance. It was very slippery. Inga didn't realize how she slipped and fell to the ground. What happened next is unknown. Selena lived with her mom. She wanted to get married or at least find a young man who would take her away from home. Everything was fine until recently when her mother brought a man into the house. "Mom, he's hitting on me," peeping in the shower, complained her daughter to her. "What are you talking about?" The woman didn't believe her. She was so happy that in her old age she had met a life partner. Her daughter had grown up. She was in college. It was time to think about her own life. "Find someone else," her mother told her. "Yes, you think that someone would be waiting for me around the corner?" Selena answered her sadly. "Well, let's get you an apartment." The woman offered the last argument she had. "You what? Where is the money from?" was surprised daughter. "Lenia said he would help," she parried. "Well, if he helps, then I agree finally. Her dream will come true, and she will live alone." As soon as the girl moved out, she began a completely different life. Now she could eat or not eat before her mother pointed it out, bring her friends to visit, and everything else. "Selena, you've blossomed," Mickey, who she had liked for a long time, told her. Like? She wanted him to go out with her or come and visit. Yeah, he didn't ask or say anything else. He just stood there silent. "Come and visit me," she plucked up the courage. "Why, and I will come," he revived. "So I'm waiting for you tonight," she blushed. At home, Selena cooked unpretentious dishes, expecting that the guy would come hungry, because students are all like that, and so he did. "Hi," he stood there glowing like a new dollar. "Come in," she greeted him cordially. The young people went to the kitchen. There the girl immediately began to put dishes on a plate. After that, they moved to the room. "Wow, you have parents, Kata rented?" He looked around. "Yes, the mother did not want me to disturb her, did not want to talk about it, girl." "I see," he turned to her. "Why didn't you notice me before?" she asked him bluntly. "Did you see what you were wearing?" "I did, but in a different way," he laughed. "Fool," she turned away. "Do not be offended. I understand that you live with your mother. Most likely, it is her merit." He stopped laughing and put his hand on the back of the sofa so that a little touched the girl. "Okay, let's watch a movie. I made beer and chips." She got up, went to the fridge, and brought everything to the table. The evening was very heartwarming. Selena realized that she liked him for a reason. He was exactly what she needed in her life. The next day, Mickey was again at the girl's house. I missed him. She met him in a funny homemade suit. And me, he handed her a teddy bear. "Why did you spend the money? Already probably not enough." She hugged him. At that moment, the guy pulled her against him. She looked up, and at that moment, Mickey started kissing her. From that day on, the lovers never parted again. "Are you going to school?" she asked him. "No, I don't want to." He stretched his hands to her, and when they made contact, the girl found herself in bed with the guy. And they weren't going anywhere together today. "We can't do this. We're in our final year. We have to get our diplomas at any cost," Selena said. "Nothing is going to happen over one day." Mickey kissed her. It felt so good, so warm in his arms. She watched and couldn't believe they were really together. "Why don't we go visit your mom?" Mickey suggested it. "Are you ready to propose?" She was happy. "Why not?" "Not yet, though." He wasn't looking her in the eye. "What's the matter?" The girl didn't understand. "No, just," he spread his hands. Selena didn't want to take Mickey's mom to visit unannounced. She'd called, said they were coming over. Her mother had gotten excited. Then the girl let Mickey know about it. How exciting, they were going. "I don't see what the big deal is," she shrugged. "Hello." They entered the house where the girl's mother lived. "Hurry, things would soon get cold." The mother was waiting for them. Richard was already sitting at the table. He was smiling. "Well, what, daughter, are you going to get married?" her mother asked her. "Wait, we haven't finished our studies yet." Selena made a serious face. "It's okay. You'll get your diplomas, get a job, and then you'll start renting an apartment yourself, and you'll get married," the woman reasoned. To be honest, Selena didn't expect anything else from her. She looked sadly at the woman who had loved her as a child, strictly brought her up in her youth. And now what? That Richard had come along and everything had gone to shit. "We should probably go." The girl stood up. She looked at Mickey. "Where to? We haven't tried anything yet. You could see that the guy was getting into the confidence of his future mother-in-law. There, you see, the guy says smart things, got the mother on his side. Good. Sat back down Selena. After that, it was only Mickey who talked at the table. He talked about his academic success and everything else. In the evening, they finally left the apartment. Why did you want to go and visit them? Selena wondered. Just to get acquainted. It seemed like he was really telling the truth. Well, they came home. There was no mood to talk about anything. As time went on, school continued. Things with Mickey became monotonous. Before, they were always going out having fun, but now they were just sitting at home. Mickey, we used to have fun together at home, she told him. What's different now? He didn't understand. That was it. She couldn't help herself. That evening, the guy got up and left. Selena cried, tried to call him, but he didn't answer. What was going on in her life? Why was she like this? She'd gone from being a kind, helpful girl to some kind of freak. She thought it over, and the next day, while studying, Selena approached Mickey. I'm sorry, I snapped. It's all come up, Mom, the house parties. She stood in front of him guilty. Come here, I'm sorry too, he hugged her. From that moment on, they had a different relationship. By graduation, the guy proposed to Selena. He became something else altogether. He'd go out at night, come back late. Selena felt sorry for him, thought he was depressed. Congratulations, she kissed her husband-to-be, both holding diplomas. And he was happy. A very different happy life was beginning, Selena thought. But it turned out that this happiness was only her own idea. When are we going to apply? She asked Mickey. I don't know, you want to do it tomorrow, he shrugged. Selena looked at him. He was always sad. Nothing was working out for him, or he didn't want to do anything. She found a job quickly. The pay was good. The staff was normal. That's it. There is nowhere to pull. Let's go to the registry office. One evening, she said to him. Come on, he followed her like a dog. Mickey, I can't take it anymore. Tell me what's going on. She couldn't understand it. It's okay. That's all he answered her. I can see something's happened to you. Selena stopped in the middle of the street. She didn't go anywhere that day. Mashka, hi, can I come over? She called her friend. Of course, she agreed. That evening, Selena and Maria sat in her kitchen and drank wine. The girl told and told. She was crying. She couldn't stop. What are you so killed? Sit down and talk. The friend was incomprehensible. What is difficult about it? He doesn't talk to me, you know. Selena raised her tearful eyes. She got home late. Mickey was already asleep. The girl lay down next to her. Cats were scratching at her soul. That day started as usual, but how it would end, the girl could not even guess. Selena, we need to talk to you, Mickey told her at breakfast this morning. It's about time. She looked at him. I'm leaving, he said. What? She even got up from her chair. I have another. He lowered his eyes to the floor. Mickey, don't lie to me. Tell me what's wrong with our relationship. She couldn't believe it. The night you and I had our fight and I left, I met a girl at the bar. I don't know how it happened. We were drinking heavily. We went to her house. That's where it happened. After that, she started calling, I answered. He told it like he was being interrogated. So, if you don't want to, you don't have to be with her, do you? She couldn't understand what was happening. She was dizzy. She's having my baby, he said at the end. God, how could this happen? Selena cried. Mickey was packing his things, and Selena was getting ready for work. She was walking down the street, and she didn't realize how just like that, in an instant, her happy life had been blown to pieces. At the office, she went up to her floor. Her co-worker friends were there, all friendly. They were acting strangely that day. Selena, come in to see me, her boss called out to her. Yeah, she came to see her. You see, there is a redundancy and I have to fire you because you are new. You have just arrived, said the boss. And Selena's ears were ringing so loudly that she couldn't listen anymore. She gathered her things, which weren't much, and went home. It was cold outside, but she didn't feel it. When she approached her driveway, she saw a homeless woman lying in the snow. At first, the girl passed by. She didn't want to get involved. But when she entered the entrance, she stopped. And it's me, she said out loud. Today, I was thrown out on the street like that. First by a guy and then at work. She turned around, walked out of the entrance, and approached the poor guy. Can you stand up? She leaned over her. When the woman did not answer, she dragged her into the entranceway, which she managed with difficulty. The snow was easy, but then the hard part began. Selena was exhausted to the point of tears, but she did it. The woman was warm now. "I hope you are doing well." She got up and walked. She heard the woman moan. "Are you very sick?" said the girl and took a few more steps. "Help," said the homeless woman to her. "And where did all this come from today?" She came back. "Can you get up?" Again she repeated her. She realized that she could not drag her to the floor. "Give me your hand." Inga couldn't open her eyes. Everything was spinning in front of her. "Get up." Selena grabbed the railing so she had a foothold and gave her other hand to the woman. She somehow got up. Selena, overcoming her disgust, led the tramp to her home. "I'll do a good deed. Maybe karma will get better," she said aloud. At home, she put the old woman on a chair and brought her some water. When the woman took off her shoes, the landlady plugged her nose. "God, when was the last time you bathed?" she asked rhetorically. "Is there anything hot to eat?" the woman asked. "Now come in." The girl even liked the whole situation. Now she would come home, would be alone, crying, suffering, remembering, and so, at least some company and no time to think. Inga took off her jacket, which had grown attached to her, and followed the girl. "Here, the soup, yesterday cooked," she said, and then thought that she probably ate worse, smiled. Inga ate the soup as if she had never tasted anything better in her life. "Take your things off, I'll throw them away and find you something else," Selena asked, because when they got into the warmth, they started to smell so fragrant it made her eyes water. "Wow." She saw the scars on the tramp's body. "You've been through a lot." "Don't mind her." Inga was standing in front of her completely naked. "Who did that to you?" Selena got up, went to the room, brought a robe, but did not give it back, but made the old woman go to wash herself. "Why did you let me in?" Inga asked the girl. "I could steal something from you." "Take it." She waved her hands. "No, I don't need anything. Thanks for everything. Can I have my jacket back?" She got up from the chair. "No, I will not let you go anywhere." The landlady realized that today in this woman she found salvation from her suffering. "You have a husband, children. How will they understand all this?" asked Inga. "I have no one." At this point, all the pain came to her throat, and she burst into tears. "Don't." Inga wanted to approach her, but she understood that she could be unpleasant to this young person. It was all right, and she began to pour out what had happened to her. "Everyone's life is hard," Inga said. "Yes, I would never have thought that this could happen to me." The girl sobbed one last time. It seemed that all the resentment that was there came out with those tears. "Maybe I should go after all," Inga asked. "No, stay. Live a little. Tell me your story. It will be easier." At some point in her head, a stray thought flashed through her mind. What if she just lacks a caring mom who could listen to her in the kitchen and feel sorry for her? "Thank you. You're a very kind person," the woman said. Selena made her a bed on the floor and lay down on the bed herself. They did not speak again that evening. Both were exhausted. They went to bed. In the morning, Selena didn't need to be anywhere else. She got up and smelled the smell from the kitchen. "What are you doing here?" She walked in and saw the cheesecakes on the table. She took one, and though it was very hot, she took a bite. "Eat." "Don't hurry," said the woman gently. "Who brought you here?" laughed the girl. "I don't know, and you to me?" Inga sat down opposite her. "We didn't even get acquainted with you yesterday," the landlady said. "My name is Inga," said the woman. "And I'm Selena. Tell me what happened to you," she asked. "It's a very long story," sighed the guest. "I don't need to go anywhere. I'm in no hurry. I think you are too," laughed Selena. "Okay," nodded the one. "It started a long time ago." How long? Selena began to speculate in her mind. If she looks like that, then how many years has she been suffering? "Not as long as you might think." Inga smiled softly. "Okay, I'm listening," nodded her interlocutor. "About 30 years ago," gave out the woman and looked at the girl's reaction. "What, you were young then? So you are not so many years old. Why then?" She shut her mouth with her hand. "I met my future husband," she began to tell, and got to the point where he came back from prison. "What, straight cut off?" The girl looked with big eyes. "I don't know. I didn't go into details. Only after that I had hell on earth. As soon as my husband and son did not mock me," she tilted her head, A stingy tear rolled from her eye. "And how did you survive all this?" The girl was silent. "I don't know. I even tried to hang myself, but I didn't have the will," she said, asking him to let me go, but Jack kept me at home like a slave. "And then it happened that my son attacked his wife. I interceded. He pushed me away, hit my head, ended up in the hospital." Terrible. Those were the only words Selena said. But for me, it was a step to salvation. When I woke up, I pretended like something was wrong and I didn't understand anything. I smiled all the time and did things I didn't understand. At home, they stopped taking me seriously, didn't pay attention to me, and I just needed it. She was getting angry with every word, so she was angry at the men in her family. I see, Spinall rubbed her hands. "Yes, so they planned to get rid of me. They were discussing the plan. I wanted to come down at that moment. I heard it and froze. My ex-brother-in-law was going to poison me. I prepared myself. While he was in my room, I switched the capsule in his pocket for an ordinary sleeping pill. When I drank tea, of course, I fell down. They thought the deed was done." Inga stopped, drank tea, looked at Selena. And what next? She was already so engrossed that she was interested in everything else. "I, of course, do not know it, but I can guess. I was taken to the forest. Imagine my own son. Okay, husband, but a bloodline. I do not understand. I woke up from the cold, heard footsteps, got scared, pretended to be unconscious again. A man came over. I was so afraid he would take me to the hospital. They would find out who I was and bring me back to that wretched house again," she sobbed. "Yes, that's quite a story," Selena marveled. "But he turned out to be a coward, scared of something, took me to the tramps that lived on the outskirts, and then I had to play amnesia. The people who brought the food were always asking around. What was their name, to help them find relatives, and I didn't want that. Let it be with vagrants, but I'm free. No one pokes me. No one commands me." She stopped again to drink tea. "How did you end up here? It's far from the outskirts." Selena was already head over heels in that story. "To be honest, it's not a good story. I don't want to tell it. I'm disgusted. You saw what I was like when I came here." She looked at her new acquaintance. "Stay here. I won't tell anyone about you," said Celine. "I need your help," Inga asked. "Sure, whatever you want." The girl turned to listen. "Need a good lawyer," I later, "but I can pay." Waited for an answer after this question. "I have one acquaintance." She remembered about Richard, Mom's boyfriend. He was just engaged in legal affairs. "If you help me, you won't regret it," the woman said. "All right, I'll try to talk him into it," the girl promised her. After that, everyone went about their business. Selena left the house after a couple of hours, and Inga just sat in an armchair and read a book. She thought everything over. The main thing was to get help, because Jack could do a lot. "He agrees." Selena came home. "What did you tell him?" Inga wondered. "Nothing of what you told me, just pressed on pity," admitted the girl. "Well then, the war begins," clenched her fist the one who had been bullied all her life. There was so much anger at the native people that even words cannot express. Richard, when he came to visit, he doubted for a long time that this client would be able to pay him, but he liked the story so much that he decided to take the case. "You and I will file a statement, indicate there that they abused you, tried to kill you, and everything else?" asked the man. "Yes, that's right," she agreed with him. "Do you have any witnesses to any of this?" It was important. "Yes, the ex-sister-in-law. The doctors can give extracts with all the references." Inga began to enumerate. "Great, consider it a done deal." He snapped his fingers. The case had begun, but Jack and Arnold didn't know it yet. After they took the mother and wife out into the woods, they waited a few days to report them missing. When this happened, the son began to tell them that his mother, with her sick head, kept asking to be taken to one place or another. He was asked to show these places. First, they went to the market, then somewhere else, and the third object was the forest. But no matter how many times they looked, there was no body. Did the wolves eat her? Arnold wondered when he talked to his father. Nothing. Soon time will pass, they will consider her missing, and we will still get the inheritance, his father reassured him. Of course, without a death certificate, no one would give them anything. They lurked and waited for the time to pass when the woman would be reported missing. "Why don't you find out anything?" Arnold was nervous. "Why should I go to the trouble?" His father didn't understand. Their hands were tied now. They had to sit quietly to keep themselves uncovered. The doorbell rang. Jack got up and went to open it. On the threshold stood a solid man. "Hello, my name is Richard. I represent your wife, Inga." He said everything at once. "What wife?" "She disappeared a few months ago." The man stood looking at him. "I don't know. Here is her statement. She instructed me to sue you and to handle the case." The lawyer spoke politely. "I don't understand anything. Come in." You could see how the hands of the master of life trembled. "Here, you can familiarize yourself with everything here." He held out a folder with documents to Jack. Arnold was curious too, so he came over. "It's all the ravings of a madman," he said. "My wife has been having trouble with her head lately." "That's not true, and the doctors can confirm that she's fine." He pulled out a certificate. "What's going on here?" The man turned to his son. He only shrugged his shoulders in response. "Well, I've notified you. The lawsuit has been filed. Wait for the summons. I don't advise you to run away." Richard smiled before leaving. "And what, tell me, what were their faces like?" Celine couldn't wait for the man. Though she disliked him, it didn't matter now. "What do you think?" He laughed. "Can you imagine? They are sitting waiting for the inheritance to pass into their hands, and then on top of that, the lawsuit," laughed the girl. "Stop it. He who laughs well," said Inga. She sat and listened to Richard. She had the same joy in her soul, but she was not used to show it. "Great. I think we're in a winning position." The man said goodbye to them and drove home. "He's nice," Inga said. "And what he takes you all for," snorted the girl. They waited for the lawyer to call. The woman needed clothes to look decent at the trial. Selena decided to splurge. She trusted the lady. The hearing was scheduled in a month. When Jack saw Inga, his eyes almost popped out of his orbits. She wasn't as beautiful as she used to be, but she held herself with pride. "Mother, how can you slander your own son?" Arnold shouted at her. "And when you beat and humiliated her, did you think about it?" Selena put in her word. "Who are you? Who are you anyway? You've got your mom's money, so you made it all up." They shouted until they were stopped. Richard was the one who had it all in his hands. The men were sentenced to 12 and 13 years. They kept their heads down and sat like that for the rest of the trial. "I'll get out. I'll kill you." Jack turned to her and gestured it all away. "No way," Selena reassured Inga. Arnold was crying. He didn't want to go there at all. He was weak, especially, and his father wouldn't be around. "True to form," whispered his mother as he walked past her. "By the way, why didn't you mention Carlo, your son-in-law?" Selena asked her when they were already out. "He was a pawn like many in their game," the woman muttered. "What will you do now?" The girl asked. "Invite you to visit me." Inga was happy. They had come to this big house that she had dreamed of so much when she was young. Now she hated the place. "Wow," Selena walked around admiring it. "Baby, don't you think you're getting fat? Or is it something else?" the woman asked her. The girl stopped, she thought, counting to herself. It can't be. She looked at the woman as if the woman had told her some universal secret. "We should get it checked out," Inga advised her doctor. As Selena left, she would be gone for hours. The woman sat down at the phone. "Julia, hi," she dialed her daughter's number. "Mommy, you can't imagine how much I've missed you," she cried into the phone. "Come home, now everything is calm here," said and smiled the mistress of a huge fortune. "With pleasure, but I'm not alone," she stopped talking. "Okay, I'll accept anyone," laughed Mom. After that, she did not calm down and called Diana. "You?" She couldn't believe her ears. "Can you come over?" her ex-mother-in-law asked her. "I'm not going to your house anymore." The girl began to refuse. "Come now, it's my house," reassured her Inga. "If so, then wait," promised Diana. Selena returned happy. "Even if it's just a small piece of Pasha's life," she said to her new good friend. "Will you stay?" The woman asked her. "What are you suggesting?" The girl couldn't believe it. "Soon all my dear people will gather. You will give birth. A grandchild will appear." She touched her stomach. "I had to pick up a homeless woman in my yard." Selena couldn't believe it. "What's the big deal? Kindness is always reciprocated with kindness." Inga hugged her. They began to clean the huge house, which had not been cleaned for many years. A lot of things had been thrown out, rearranged. "And let's make separate rooms for everyone," the landlady suggested. What do you mean? The girl didn't understand her. A nursery for the baby, a bedroom for my daughter with a young man, a boudoir for my former daughter-in-law, and for you too. Inga was glad that now she could do everything here as she wanted. I don't believe in all this at all, was still fascinated by Selena. Richard and his wife were also invited to celebrate the housewarming. Julia came with her fiancé. The latter took along a friend who had dreamed of seeing Russia all his life. Diana was also here when Inga told her everything. She couldn't believe it, that it was true. Selena, can I talk to you? Michael said in very bad Russian. Yes, what did you want? She turned and walked over to him. Why you? He corrected her. Okay, she blushed. You are very beautiful, he complimented her and led her into the garden. Are you asking to stay here in our country? She was joking. What? He didn't understand her. No reason. I'm joking, laughing. She smiled. You'll make a good couple. She approved of Michael's choice. Well, how are the rooms? Selena couldn't wait to find out, because she'd done everything with her own hands. Great, especially mine, Diana smiled. Here's what I want to tell you, friends, stood up from the seat Inga. All invited here can stay here to live. I will not interfere. It's embarrassing, said Diana. It's okay. You've suffered so much for my son. You need to live like in paradise, said her former mother-in-law. What about you? Richard asked Selena. While Michael is here, I'll stay, and then we'll see. They held hands. Look how two people could make so many people happy. They should have just disappeared. The woman laughed. They sat back down at the table and talked and laughed for a long time more. Selena stayed to live with Inga. Things worked out well for them with Michael. When he found out that the girl was pregnant, at first he was frightened. How could it be possible? Because they only kissed. In fact, he was so funny. For a while, they went to this place to make the documents and then came back. Here we go, Selena screamed in the middle of the night. A car arrived quickly and the girl was taken to the maternity hospital. A large number of people waited outside the hospital to see how it would go. I never thought that my daughter would have such a big family, her mother said. She finally realized that she had behaved wrongly. Look, Richard pointed at the girl in the white coat who was coming toward them. What? Who? The customers started clamoring. I congratulate you. You have a grandson, a son, a nephew. She moved her gaze from one person to another. Thank you, Selena. Congratulations. They all started shouting together. Now you better go home and tomorrow morning come back. The young mother needs to rest, the nurse advised them. Okay, see you tomorrow. Everyone went to Inga's house. It didn't matter that it was night. Now this group was so united, stronger than some family ties. My dears, I invite you to the table. They entered the hall of the big house.